Live from MMA Fighting Studios, this is Between the Links. And now, your host, Mike Heck.
The iconic voice of Esterlin welcomes you to a brand new edition of BTL. It's another Thursday, another week with a lot of crap to discuss. We're coming off of a UFC pay-per-view fight week. Not a great one, not even a good one, but the main event saved it from being one of the worst in a very, very long time. Plus, there's a lot of speculation, a lot of emotional reactions surrounding the UFC's next pay-per-view event, the return of the biggest star in the history of the sport, and much more. So let's get right into this. Let's introduce the panelists. First, he's Mr. No Gray Area, the hot take kid himself, the Baron of Boot here at MMAfighting.com, Mr. Jed Mishu. Hello, Jed. Happy Thursday.
I was waiting for the swerve because the last time we did something like this, I got swerved, Mike, and I didn't see it coming. And maybe I'm still getting, maybe this is the long con, but I'm on guard now. For at any point in time when me and this fellow are matched up, I gotta have my guard up. I'm ready.
Yes, that's very, very smart, but there will be no Bizarro BTL today because back on the show, regularly scheduled programming, boots on the ground during UFC 302 fight week. He's our travel mile champion here at MMAfighting.com, the social media and graphics guru himself. And what a host he was during Bizarro BTL. Mr. Jose Youngs, live from New York. Hello, sir.
It's game one is tonight. That's the only important thing that's
go.
happening. It's the beginning. You know, like a week from now, we'll be hoisting, banner 18, and then we can have it's 18, right? I think the Lakers are at 16, We're at 17. So the bigger the gap we are between the Lakers and us, the better I sleep, because I can't live in a world where the Lakers have more or the same banners as us. Just that is a blood-soaked, nightmarish hellscape that I don't want to live in. So I guess BTL happens to be on the same day as game one because that's the most important thing happening today.
Yes.
Was
Hashtag
the
Celtics
big three
in 5.
Celtics the last one?
Yeah.
From
We've
Boston?
lost 2 since then.
I know you've been back.
We should have beat
don't
the
think
Lakers
you-
in 2010, but Kendrick Perkins blew his ACL out or whatever in game 7, and that was the beginning of the end. And then, what was it, 2 years ago we went, and we were just way too young. Tatum and Brown ran into the Warriors. Just too young, too inexperienced.
That was Warriors 4, right?
Yeah, that was their
one?
fourth. That was their fourth win, and it was a competitive series. We were just too young and not ready.
Yeah, but we ready for Kyrie. Bring that noise. Bring it. I dare you to stomp on Lucky again.
I mean,
Dare you,
to
Kyrie.
be fair, the two best players in this championship, in this NBA Finals, are both on the Mavericks. Like Kyrie and Luka are both better than Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, but we have the better team. The better team is in green. The better players, the two best players, are in white and blue.
I'll give you Luka. Kyrie ain't better.
Kyrie is better than both of them.
Jason
I don't
Tatum.
even think it's. No, Jason Tatum is a better player on this Celtics team. But if you're a better basketball player, there is not than Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic right now.
I don't like where your attitude is going, Jose. I do like the fact that Drake put a hefty bet on
Let's say
the
you're
Dallas
fine.
Mavericks. That makes me feel so much better.
Celtics in
about everything.
6. Celtics in 6. That's what I'm saying.
I got it in 5. But look, that's later on tonight. Game 1, UFC 302 happened this past weekend. The main event was great, provided a lot of storylines, and we'll certainly talk about that. But UFC 303 has taken over the news cycle this week because, as we found out this past Sunday night, very late, the UFC announces that the scheduled press conference that was set to go down on Monday of this week in Dublin with Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler to set up their big fight was, quote, postponed. And boy, oh boy, the old floodgates opened since the UFC didn't provide any reason as to why it was scratched. Conor McGregor made a pretty vague, very PR tweet about it. Michael Chandler has been kind of cryptic about it. He's making and mixing margarita beverages on his social media at this point, and then speculation begins to run rampant. And I know we reported what we knew on MMA Fighting. Ariel Helwani on the MMA reported what he knows, and as of this moment, seems like we're still a go for UFC 303. But again, we're not getting anything outside of just having some conversations, most of them off the record. So, Jose, we have not heard from you on this topic. On Sunday, because you were probably awake, you probably made the old graphic for what transpired with this announcement. Your initial reaction to the news? Yeah,
I think that was a New York specialty.
Yes. What was your reaction to this? The news dropped Sunday, postponement, it's scratched. How are you feeling about things now, and how do you feel like it's been handled since Sunday night?
My first reaction was, thank God MMA Fighting didn't send me to Dublin for 24 hours for that press conference, because I would have been finding out as I landed. But yeah, I'm not surprised they rescheduled it or canceled it or postponed it, whatever you want to say, because it's Conor McGregor, and there's no human alive that exemplifies that. I don't believe he's fighting until he's in the octagon, then Conor McGregor. I was surprised it was postponed so close to the date, if that makes sense. Because Dana White literally like that Saturday or Sunday morning at like 2-3 in the morning local time said, I have to go get on a plane after this. So up until about that point, we thought the press conference was happening. He told that to our faces. Take that for what you will with Dana White, but Dana White usually doesn't mess around when it comes to, press conferences, promotion, and being on time and this and that. So I wasn't surprised it was postponed, because Conor, has played hardball. Like, he was famously supposed to fight Nate Diaz at UFC 200 and didn't show up to a press conference he was scheduled at. There was that empty chair, and he live tweeted the press conference while the press conference was going on. So Conor not showing up, not a surprise. Dana announced, or not even Dana, I guess. All right, I'm surprised it was so close to the event. I'm surprised it's been pretty radio silent outside of Conor McGregor's tweet and his very vague post of him what appeared to be in a physical therapy or hospital or doctor's office, whatever, with a big cheesy smile on his face. I feel like we're getting all of our information from reporters and journalists, which is obviously a good thing because they're doing their jobs. I don't like hearsay. I don't like the follow the breadcrumb things where it's like, oh, they made all these videos private. Oh, ESPN Plus is doing this, because that now you're just getting the hypotheticals and hearsay and conspiracy theories. And I don't subscribe to any of those notions. I just want the facts. So the fact that our colleague Ariel is putting some stuff out, we've heard some stuff from online from various other people that seem to be in the know. I'm listening to that. I'm not following the breadcrumbs as of yesterday, obviously at the MMA Hour, because this is live. If you watch it after, on Thursday, so Wednesday, Ariel said it seems to be optimistic. Ariel's not one to lie at all when it comes to like journalistic integrity stuff. So I believe him. So yeah, all signs point to good as of right now. That could change in 72 hours, because Conor was supposed to be on a press conference on a Monday. On a Sunday, that was still happening, and all of a sudden it was canceled. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, but it's Conor McGregor, so you're kind of like grasping for air at this point, trying to find answers.
Yeah, and the important thing is what you kind of noted at the end. It could change in 72 hours. It could change in 72 seconds from right now. We could be in the middle of the show and something can change. And if it does, we'll certainly talk about it. But Jed, as you know, the UFC does things their way. They always have. They keep things tight to the vest. When a problem arises, they deny. Don't listen to the media, yada, yada, yada. If you don't hear from us, it's bullshit. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out something went awry with this whole thing, but it seems like, at least as Jose sort of referenced, as of this moment, we are on track for UFC 303. So how would you grade the handling of this thus far? Because this has become the biggest story of the week, and we know very little.
If you subscribe to the Joaquin Buckley school of, as long as you're in the news, it's good, then this has been handled perfectly. We're talking about this event 3 weeks out. I am getting texts from people like who have no interest in MMA, who are like, is Conor pulling out? Like, what the hell's going on? So, if that's your benchmark, then I guess they're handling it well. If you're talking about like how a media entity manages problems, I would say that this has been handled exceedingly poorly, because when you create or when you reveal that there is an issue, and canceling the press conference definitionally says something's amiss here, boys. And then that's it. You just say problem, is out. That leads to wild speculation about what could or could not be. That is why I think on the MMA Hour yesterday, they like looked at ticket prices, and the ticket prices resale had dropped because like there was a vibe that maybe this event won't happen, or it won't happen with Conor. Like, you create an opportunity for chaos by not coming out and saying, hey, this event, sorry, like last minute, this has been canceled. There has been an issue. You can lie with that issue, by the way. You like, the UFC is under no onus to tell us the truth. They like, Dana White lies all the time about stuff. He goes on every podcast possible to tell you blatantly false things about Power Slap. He could have come out and been like, hey, we had to cancel the venue in Dublin because we screwed up our flight times, and we actually just won't get there in time, and it's not going to work. It could be any lie, and that would at least be something, as opposed to, yeah, we're not doing this anymore. Now spend the next 72 hours making up whatever you want. And the fact that the radio silence has been so comprehensive from all sides, like, genuinely, I have been very firmly on the corner of Conor is not going to pull out of a fight because he never has. And as this week has gone on, I've been like, it must be critically bad, and the UFC is scrambling to find a replacement, and they don't want to say anything until they have the, hey, this happened, but here you go. They don't just want to come out and be like, hey, Conor's out, we're working on a fix, and they want to present the response as well. Now, according to Ariel, who, like Jose said, I trust, it seems that that's not what's happened, but it just leads me to be like, what the did happen? Like, what could possibly cause them to cancel the press conference and be real weird and not just come out and say, hey, there's been a setback, something, anything. And so it's just really, really poorly handled to leave anything up to so much speculation in a negative capacity.
So, Jed, as you laid out, Conor McGregor, if pen goes to paper, does not pull out of fights. Right now, June 6th, year of our Lord 2024, this fight is scheduled to happen in 23 days in Las Vegas. Already a $20+ million gate, according to the UFC. Even money odds. Is this fight happening? Yes or no, and why?
I'm saying yes. And I said, when we did a ranking show, we talked about this topic. I said that I was 60-40 yes. As the kind of weekday went on, I got closer to 50-50 and maybe even swapping to less likely than not, just because it has been so weirdly quiet. Like, usually, can you guys think of the last time something like this just had nothing? Like, there was nobody. There's not even us talking like in the back Slack channels of, hey, I hear that it's actually this, but we can't go. Like, there ain't nothing out there. And with that, it was just, I started to get to, okay, they're trying to figure out how to save this, and they don't want to talk about it until. But like I said, I trust what Ariel says. If Ariel says that they are optimistic, Conor posts the Instagram thing this morning. It seems like it's going to happen. So I'm still banking on that, and I'll say yes, it's going to happen.
Jose, are you as confident? Are you saying yes right now? Even money odds, are you betting this fight happens June 29th?
Unrelated. Jed using the phrase comprehensively quiet is an astounding combination of words, considering those mean nothing. Those are completely different things. But am I confident it'll happen? Yeah, probably, just because Ariel doesn't tend to lie. But when I say I'm confident right now. In 24 hours, if the closer we get to the fight and if it's still radio silence like a week before I'm supposed to go to Vegas, ask me again. Right now, I'm pretty confident. Conor posted that weird, cheesy smile. That photo could have been taken a month ago. That photo could have been taken a year ago, for all we know. Conor could be, about to go into surgery, and we wouldn't know. Conor could be in PT right now, and we wouldn't know. So the comprehensive quietness of all of this is alarming. But right now, I'm confident. Conor doesn't tend to pull out. There's a lot of money being put into this. I also know the deal with the T-Mobile Arena is fairly close to being done. I think that's why they're trying to do this. They're trying to get one of those dates in so then they can go do the Sphere card and then re-up with the T-Mobile. That's also like another aspect of this. There's the Hall of Fame. There's the UFC Fan Expo, biggest gate in the history of the whatever. If Conor's not fighting, they're going to need a real big last-minute main event to headline IFW and make everything worth it.
I mean, what a professional you are, Jose. I'm telling you, because you segued right into the big question here. Because we just don't know. We have no clue what's happening. We don't know if it's an injury or if it's COVID or anything. Like, we truly don't know. There's nothing like on the record that tells us anything. So if it doesn't happen, Jose, if this fight can't happen, if Dana comes out, jumps on Instagram, leads it off with, hey guys, we're pushing this one back. Conor did this and this. He can't fight for a few months. What in the blue hell can the UFC do to save this card that is realistically an option? Because if you run down the list of champions, they're either booked or had just fought, or the bigger names have fought recently and are banged up. What do we do here? What is the option? What does Dana say that is actually a realistic thing that we could put on the table?
I think and I'm answering this realistically, not what I want to see, because there are obviously, like, who wouldn't want to see like Max Holloway versus Ilya at UFC 303? That's not happening because that's probably going to headline the Sphere card. Realistically, just based on who is available and who could draw interest, you could do Alex Pereira versus Anthony Smith, because Alex is always down to clown. He wants to fight early because Anthony Smith just fought in May, and he outside of that mishap in when he weighed in as the backup, he seems to, he takes these short notice fights. He took that one against Khalil Roundtree, made weight. Didn't go well for him, but I think that Alex is a big deal in UFC fight fans. He headlined UFC 300, is the only fighter to headline 3 Madison Square Garden cards. Every time he shows up, he's a big deal. I think him versus Anthony Smith, obviously Ankalaev would be or Yuri would be the more logical one, because they're close, higher up the ranks, but they're overseas. Yuri wants, I don't know if Yuri can make, or either of those are ready to go right there. Anthony Smith seems down to clown whenever he wants. He's close to Las Vegas. You could do Charles Oliveira versus Chandler 2 at welterweight. You could do Charles Oliveira versus Colby Covington 2 at welterweight, but no, Colby Covington says he's kind of beat up still. That's why he's not fighting Ian Gary. I mean, Alex is really the big one that could headline this, right? The one that is a big enough star, that is a champion, that could headline an international fight week. But I would love to live in a world where, obviously we all want Conor to fight because he generates interest and the fans love it. But if we live in a world where Alex Pereira headlines 3 Madison Square Garden cards, UFC 300, and International Fight Week, that man is already a superstar. He just catapults himself even higher into megastar realm. So I guess those, and I'm answering this realistically, like in a perfect world, we could get Ilya versus Max, or Max versus Chandler, or whatever, like some exciting fight like that. But realistically, Alex Pereira versus fill in the blank seems to be the most realistic answer that could possibly happen and be worth the ticket price for UFC 303.
Jed, where are you at now? I know we talked about this on the ranking show a little bit, but with what is realistic on the table, Ariel talked about it on the nose yesterday about the Max Holloway rumors, and he basically said it's not a thing. Was it discussed? Were seeds planted at some point? Yes, but he ended with it's not a thing. I've heard similar. So what realistically can they do here? If this fight doesn't happen, what the hell happens now?
Nothing. They can do nothing. There are no good outcomes if Conor can't fight for whatever reason. Like, Alex is, I guess, the best. I don't know if Alex can fight. He broke his foot not that long ago, and making 205 is not the easiest thing for him. And is Alex Pereira at a catch weight or a heavyweight fight? Is that what you want to headline International Fight Week? Sure, against Anthony Smith, maybe that's not the worst thing that's ever happened, but the gap between Conor McGregor's return and Alex Pereira versus Anthony Smith is massive. That is an enormous delta between those two things. And so that's not a good result. That's not a best of a bad situation. That's we got nothing else here. I maintain, and I know what you just said, and I know what Ariel said, and I'm certain that y'all are not lying I am certain that that is what has been said and reported and told to you. The only viable outcome, if Conor can't go, in my opinion, is you pay Max whatever the cost is to get him to fight Michael Chandler. Because there is a number. Max may want to fight Ilia Topuria. There is a number that he will not say no to. And you meet that number and he fights Chandler because he would beat Chandler. And then he can still fight Topuria later. He's just done this thing for you and made a lot of money. But outside of that, there's not a good outcome. And so maybe the answer is you just pay Conor whatever he asks to get, if he blew out his knee or if his leg is infected or whatever it is, because we still have no idea. You just keep throwing money and deal at him until whatever he is asking for, until he says, I'll do it. It's fine, because there are no good outcomes that don't involve Conor McGregor. And the next best outcome is still prohibitively expensive for you. So you're going to have to spend money. I guess spend it and just make Conor happen.
This is like freaking wild. And Ariel said something yesterday that, and I think he even said it Monday too, like if they didn't schedule this press conference, we wouldn't even be talking about this right now. Like we would have no idea what was happening. It's crazy.
The press conference is what blows my mind though. Like, I just don't know what could have intervened to be like, we can't do this press conference, but this fight is still a go. Like it's.
Yeah. Or just say like, look, we tried audio teching everything and the speakers didn't work or whatever happened. There were some sort of issue inside the venue where we couldn't do it. And so we had to call it like something and leave it less vague. But this is what the UFC does. And they create a lot of conversation. And that's why we just spent 25 minutes on this topic and still really don't know much outside of things are optimistic and in a much better place now than they were Sunday, Monday, maybe even Tuesday. So we will keep you posted on MMAfighting.com with the latest on this story, but let us go backwards a little bit. Let's go back 5 days and discuss UFC 302. Point for round one goes to Jose Youngs, 1-0. Nicely done. Go C's. That was a homer pick more than anything, but that's okay. Celtics are going to go up 1-0. Jose has also gone up 1-0. So let's talk about UFC 302. Goes down in Brick City, Newark, New Jersey. And I have to say, the media, I think MMA Fighting in particular, I think we sold this card better than the UFC did. I think we sold it in a big way. We said it would be a fun watch. Don't miss it. Spend your $80. The main event sells itself. Dustin Poirier trying to finish the story. And in the end, the main event does deliver. And yes, we had Basil Hafez versus Mickey Gall beating the hell out of each other. We had Jailton Almeida and Kevin Holland picking up quick submissions. There wasn't a single knockout on this card, and it was a tough, sloggy watch through most of it, with all due respect to the athletes. That's just what the viewing experience was. Jed, will we be doing a damn they were good on UFC 302 anytime soon?
No, God, no. This is a pretty tough card. This is arguably the worst pay-per-view of the year to watch. And that's no fault of the main event. Like, the main event is one of the 3 best fights of the year thus far. If you dropped $80 on the portion you paid $80 for, you probably don't feel like amazing about it, but you at least got to end the night with a very, very fun, very good fight. So it could be worse. Like, if you swap the co-main and the main event in bout order, you would be livid. You dropped $80 on this, but the way it played out, it's not that bad. I wouldn't honestly be that surprised if fewer people bought the main card, just because the build to it was so bad. Yeah, just look, sometimes it doesn't work out. While I think Dana saying it's the cards that you don't think about that are actually the best is like one of the stupidest things of all time, I am willing to play the opposite of that and say, hey, they put together on paper was a pretty solid card. And it didn't play out. Sometimes you're not going to bat 1,000, and that's just what happened. There's nothing wrong with the matchmaking here from a competitive standpoint. Now, if you want to say that there's an issue with the matchmaking from a star power standpoint, I'd agree. This card was very, very thin on both on that as well. So wasn't a great event. but the main event was awesome. Kevin Holland broke a dude's arm, or maybe broke a dude's arm. A lot of like some other cool stuff happened, so it wasn't the worst time ever.
Jose, you were there. You were a very busy man, of course, but just didn't seem like there was a lot of electricity in the Prudential Center outside of the main event and good old 45 Donald Trump. So, yeah, what was it like in there? Was there electricity? Was there vibes outside of the main event and Trump?
I was backstage in the media room doing press conferences and interviews for the entire fight card, so I never got to go out to the actual arena. So you'd have to ask New York Rick, who was out by the octagon shooting social clips for us. But in terms of this actual card, New York fans should just be used to this, because do you all remember UFC 169? Probably not, because at the time it had the most decisions ever, and at the time was the longest card in terms of time. It was like almost 3 hours long in the history of the UFC. There were 2 finishes. The main event, which is controversial because that was Renan Barão, Uriah Faber 2, and then they had Jamie Varner versus Abel Trujillo, which is an incredibly underrated, like 1.5 round banger. So no one's ever talked about that card ever since, outside of, the controversial main event, because Alistair Overeem decided to turn into a D1 wrestler and just grapple Frank Mir for 3 rounds. Couldn't even tell you who else was on that card. In fact, Islam Makhachev might have been on the prelims. It could have been another one of the, the Dagestani wrestlers. No one's ever talked about that card ever again. I think, this is like recency bias thing where everyone's kind of clowning on UFC 302. Main event ruled. But that's kind of what it was built around. I didn't see a lot of people pre-fight hyper excited for the prelims. They seemed more upset that Jailton Almeida got dropped to the prelims in the main card. That fight was still awesome. Jailton Almeida is the man. Alexander Romanov continues to prove that MMA fighting staff cannot pick good prospects. But Jailton Almeida did the thing on the prelims. No one else was talking about the prelims. The prelims is what it is. The main card, it is what it is. Everyone talks about the main event, and that's what we're talking about after. I can't imagine we're going to do a damned whatever on 302, but I can't imagine any pay-per-view card this year outside of UFC 300 will get a damned they were good. Because you know what else? You know what has the record for most decisions now in the history of the UFC for a fight card? Bring everyone up, Casey. I want to hear everyone's guesses. You know what fight card has the record for most decisions ever?
I don't remember.
It's Marvin Vettori, Israel Adesanya 2. Has like 12 or 13 decisions or whatever. And we're not looking back being like, wow, that card sucked because we just moved on. And then the rest of that year was not that bad. So we're going to be talking about the main event. We're probably not going to be talking about the whole card, but I doubt we're going to be talking about many cards this year as an entire event outside of UFC 300 and maybe MSG.
I will say
that, and of course the Sphere, but that's just the Sphere, not the actual fights.
In slight defense of the UFC, though, I pulled up 263. I mean, they were just asking for decisions. You've got Leon Edwards and Bilal Muhammad on this fight card, not fighting each other. Like, come on, Movsar Evloev's on this fight card. Like, this is a Lauren Murphy. This is a litany of decision merchants, and then Terrence McKinney. So it kind of makes sense.
But like there were like Brad Riddell and Drew Dober was a banger. Jamahal Hill snapped his arm in half. I think that was Damian Maia's last fight ever in the UFC. And then Nate Diaz, Leonard had that singular moment. Terrence McKinney had that 5-6 second knockout and then blew his ACL or whatever. I know Chase Hooper lost on that card.
The Steven Peterson fight was terrible.
That was tough.
Yeah, he missed weight that card too.
When we
Eric
opened
Andrews
the
fought on that card, I think.
Philippe, Jake Collier,
But I think the difference between that one and this card is there were like when Lauren Murphy won a decision, which we all knew was going to happen, that she became the number one contender to go get pieced up by Valentina in her next fight. Like Bilal retired, Damian Maia, Leon Edwards, Nate Diaz. I don't care if it's a decision or a cut over the eye. People are going to be talking about it. And then Israel Marvin was just Israel Marvin. And it was also on Pacific time or whatever time Arizona was at that time. So it also didn't end at like 3 a.m. local.
And they had 3 5-rounders, even though the co-main, because they did the thing, but the co-main finished early enough. But yeah.
It's also way the F out in Glendale, which was a nightmare.
Yeah, they were in Newark last year for 288. That was the one main card kicked off by Crone Gracie versus Charles Jourdain.
Yeah.
That was
We're still talking about that fight?
Diego
Probably
Lopez
not.
was just fun. Evloev Diego Lopez is fun. Jan Jonan gets the only finish on the main card. Bilal Muhammad, Gilbert Burns for 5 rounds, and then Aljamain Sterling, Henry Cejudo for 5 rounds. So,
and we haven't
tough
talked about
Newark.
that card since, just like everything else that happens in Newark.
That is true. We're going to talk about Islam Makhachev in round 3, but I want to focus on Dustin Poirier, who performed admirably, Jose Youngs, won at least one of the first 4 rounds on all 3 judges' scorecards. One judge had a 2-2 heading into the 5th. I jokingly had it that way on the watch party, and then Poirier gets caught in a darce in the 5th round after just a freaking beautiful work of art sequence from Islam Makhachev. But man, Dustin showed up. Didn't retire officially. He's certainly banged up. He discussed his injuries, broken nose, broken rib, partial ACL tear. And as you know, Jose, the big storylines heading into 302 were, will Dustin Poirier finish the story, and will it be his final fight? So after that kind of performance, Jose, one that Poirier could, if he wanted to, certainly go out with his head held high, knowing he competed with the best fighter on the planet, depending on who you ask. Do you think you were in attendance for his final fight? I know you're in the back, but were you in the same building as Dustin Poirier's final fight, in your opinion, 5 days later?
No, because I thought we did in Utah when he got head kicked by Justin Gaethje, because he was pretty adamant he didn't want to fight. He said he didn't want to fight these young up-and-coming guys to let them possibly build a career off of them. Someone point blank asked him, do you want to fight these young prospects? And he said, no, not really. And then his next fight, he fights Benoit Saint-Denis. So I take what he says with a grain. Any fighter that kind of has these thoughts immediately after, especially a tough fight like that, especially someone who's been through everything Dustin Poirier has, it's an emotional scene. Emotions are high. Adrenaline's still high. He also wasn't as definitive this time like he was last time. He's like, when he was just like, I don't really want to fight these young guys coming off the Gaethje loss. So I'm going to say no, just based on, previous knowledge and previous history of what we've seen Dustin Poirier say. I think he's obviously going to take a lot of time off. He has to, because of all these injuries he had. He could come back for maybe one big money fight. I don't think he's ever going to fight for the title again. But if they, they dangle some, 7-figure fight, 8-figure fight in front of him to go fist fight Conor McGregor a 4th time, then so be it. If Nate Diaz resigns, you think he's going to, if Nate Diaz ever comes back to the UFC, which we've talked about trying to figure out what Conor McGregor's up to. Nate Diaz is a whole nother can of worms trying to figure out what his future holds after he boxes Jorge Masvidal. But say Nate Diaz does come back to the UFC, which is a possibility. How is Poirier not going to say yes to the Nate Diaz fight he's been calling for forever? And then he can fight Nate, and then he can finally retire because he's gotten everything he wanted outside of the title. So I'm going to say no. I also selfishly would love to see him fight one more time, possibly get that big Nate fight or whoever else. But if this is it, what a way to go out. One of the best fights you'll ever see.
Jed, we've had some time to digest this. I think you were like 7% that Dustin Poirier retires, win or lose, heading into the fight. And now we've seen the performance. We've seen how he improved dramatically on some of the things we were concerned about. And now the injuries coming out of it, being very emotional after the fact, seeing his family, seeing his daughter watch him compete for the first time, and her reaction to Dustin's post-fight interview. Do you think this is his final fight? Now looking at it 5 days later after some time to digest. And let me flip this to you, because I would guess you're going to say no. How would you advise him if he called you right now and said, hey, what do you think I should do, knowing full well he's still going to make his own decision?
Again, I'd still be really, really surprised if this was the last time we saw him, just because if you bet on a fighter to retire, that is a sucker bet. Nobody retires in this sport. They might be gone for a while. They might sit out 3, 4, 5, 12 years if you're Chuck Liddell, but they're always going to come back for one more run. And it's not because, sometimes it is because they need the money, but usually that's not really the primary driver. It is because this is what they know and who they are. And it's a thing that they love to do. And the opportunity to get in front of the bright lights and do it one more time for any number of reasons is so intoxicating. So I will always assume that a fighter is not retiring until they are until they are in their late 40s. And even then, I wouldn't be like stunned if they came back, because Mike Tyson is pushing 60 and trying to fight Jake Paul. Like, people don't leave combat sports. It has to get beaten out of them. And as we saw on Saturday, Dustin Poirier has not had it beaten out of them. Like, he still can compete at a very high level. He's still very good at this. And so, yes, he is now in a position, honestly, not unlike where he was against Justin Gaethje not that long ago. I am so excited. Can you guys hear the man who has brought a fucking leaf blower right to my window? Brilliant timing. And so here we are. But yeah, like he can still compete. And a year ago, we thought the same thing. Like, okay, he just got knocked out. The road back is there. And look what happened. Look how fast it turned around. None of us expected him to take the fight with BSD, because he had said, I don't really want to fight the up-and-comers. Like, I'm not interested in that. But then he changed his mind, said, you know what? This fight gets me excited. I'm a little bit scared about it. Hold on while this leaf blower goes, because I can't hear myself talk. This is nightmarish that he's still doing this shit. Like, he is looking me right in the eyes right now and doing this. Like, we're just going, and he's just living his truth, buddy. Respect. Like, I gotta respect the brazenness of staring me down while it's happening. But okay.
That's Jon Jones's biggest fan.
Honestly, maybe it is. Could totally, that would make sense. But yeah, the answer is that he's not going to give up. I think he's going to take time off. Like, he is very beaten up from this fight, and there's not a clear path back. But if the UFC calls him, in 6 months, and there is some sort of a path back, the same way it happened with BSD, said, hey, no, you're not retired, but like, Rafael Fiziev has some dude falling out, and he's finally ready to come back. Would you maybe be interested? I don't know who it would look like, but the Nate fight, 100%, if that's on the table, 1,000% he will take Nate. That's always the thing. But I think that there's also some percentage chance of, hey, Charles Oliveira wants to run things back. And Charles is still number 2. You beat him. Actually, maybe Islam's left the division. Maybe Arman beats Islam. And so instead of, you just need a win to kind of be back in title contention, a good win because you are famous. I think there's a lot of wiggle room to get him back, and he's still young and good and competitive. So I think there's very, very little chance it's the last time we've seen him. And I would advise him to just wait. You can hold your cards for a while right now. You have a lot of them. Wait to play him until the timing is right, till something jumps out that makes you say yes. And I think eventually something like that will show. And so take a year, maybe take 2. Maybe that's where it is. Don't put any burden on yourself to choose. Let the world come to you, because I think it will.
I tell you what, if Arman loses, Dustin might want to fight Arman based off of what Arman said on the MMA Hour and what Dustin's coach said about Arman's comments. Basically, obviously, for those of you who didn't watch, Arman said that he thought Dustin Poirier quit and this and that. They both trained at the same gym at ATT, and then Dustin Poirier's boxing coach took real offense to that, saying something like, oh, you're nice to our face, but then you go on MMA Hour and say all this greasiness, so could be planting the seeds.
Interpret Arman's words like that, so that's interesting.
So if basically like if that Islam showed up, it would be easy for me, this and that, and Dustin, I don't know. I can't remember his exact words, but I saw Dustin's boxing coach took some issue with the words that Arman said. So if Arman wins or loses, there's that storyline.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I think that Dustin's coach maybe has that one read wrong, but
whatever.
Well,
yeah,
we shall see. We shall see. Before we move on, I do want to talk about Sean Strickland, Jed, because this was the most disappointing fight on the card by a wide margin. And much like, I'll take almost a similar stance that I took when Israel Adesanya fought Jared Cannonier. I didn't blame Israel Adesanya for that. I blame Jared Cannonier fully for that. And in this one, Strickland went out there, did Sean Strickland things. Paulo Costa had nothing for him at all and just allowed Sean Strickland to do Sean Strickland things. I thought Strickland won all 5 rounds. One judge egregiously scored it 49-46 Costa. And Jed, you made me think. You're like, maybe that's an acceptable scorecard. So I went back and rewatched that fight. That actually might be the worst card of the night. that actually might be worse than Lima Raposo. That might be worse than giving Almeida a round. 49-46 is redonkulous, but be that as it may, Strickland comes out.
Almeida 2 rounds was the issue, not giving Almeida 1 round.
Yeah, regardless, or you giving him a decision. Regardless. But Strickland says, give me the title shot. I will wait around for it essentially for as long as it takes. Is this the right move, Jed? Was this performance, even though he didn't get a truly willing dance partner and it wasn't very fun, does he have a case to get the winner of what we assume the next title fight at 185 pounds will be between Dricus du Plessis and Israel Adesanya?
No, he has no case. I think this is the correct move for him, though. I think we are all under the assumption that Khamzat Chimaev, should he beat Robert Whittaker, will be getting a middleweight title shot against the winner of the inevitable DDP Israel Adesanya fight. That seems carved in stone. But if he loses and Izzy wins, is there a massive appetite for Izzy Whittaker 3? No, I don't think there is. And so if that happens, then I would say Sean Strickland does actually jump to the front line. If DDP wins, then there's not really much, and Whittaker wins, then there's not much of an appetite, I wouldn't think, for DDP Whittaker 2. So then you can run Strickland back. They had a very competitive fight. Like, either if Rob wins, Strickland is actually in probably pole position over the rest of the weight class. If Khamzat wins, Strickland is immediately a secondary option. And so I think saying I'm just going to sit and wait is absolutely the correct move for him, because you can say one thing and do another. Like, it's a totally fine thing. And so you can say, hey, UFC, this is what I want. And if that's what you end up getting because Rob wins, you jump in front of him, terrific. Like, everything worked out. And if not, if Khamzat wins, you can say, I'm going to sit and wait and I get to be the backup fighter for the eventual Khamzat title fight. Or you can just use that as a leverage point. Hey, I'm here where I am. So if you guys want me to fight somebody, if you want me to step in and save 303 on short notice, you better back up the money truck. It's a good leverage, good negotiation point for him. And I mean, he is in the UFC's rankings number 1, I think. He's got to be number 1. Still number 1.
Yeah,
so he has the number there. He has just got to win over a top 10, guy. I think this is the right move for him. I don't think he deserves anything, but I don't think it will be wrong if he gets a title fight coming off of this. And I think he has at least some level of a chance to do that. So this should be the way he plays this.
Mike, before you ask me a question, I want to clear up not clear up, but give the full context of what I said in the previous round, or the previous question. So, Dustin Poirier's head coach, Dia Davis, who is boxing coach, responded to something on Instagram saying, this guy, fake love and respect in the gym, but the moment he has an opportunity to take a shot, he goes for it. Bitch move, he's a clown, and then left a clown emoji. So that is very aggressive, but in even more aggressive and to the point. There was a video of Armin. I don't know who it was for because it's been aggregated by 1 million Twitter accounts. So I don't know what the original video is from or interview. It seems like a TMZ style, like Armin's talking and walking. I said basically he felt Dustin gave up mentally. It was broken late in the fight against Islam, and then very succinct and to the point, Mateusz Gamrot responds, "Armin is a bitch!" ! So take that for what you will. I didn't see that video.
That's fun. Armin did not have the same energy with Ariel.
So it is It is a walk and talk interview. I don't know who it's from. Oh, it's Outside MMA. That's who it's from. I want to give credit because it's been aggravated by 1 million times. But yeah, Mateusz Gamrot coming to his teammate's defense with just a very quick 4-word tweet. Armin is a bitch! !
Armin might be moving to Kill Cliff is what I'm hearing.
That's what I'm saying. So take that for what you will. Armin Gamrot 2, anyone? Oh, that's a banger for the title.
I mean, sign me up for that. I mean, Armin already beat him once.
Gamrot. Sure didn't.
Yeah.
Scoreboard.
Yeah, well.
Anyway, that is what I was referring to.
Don't get me started. Wow. I appreciate that. But Jose, are you surprised Sean Strickland who typically is just give me a name. I don't care where it is. I'll fight. Blood will fly everywhere. We're going to kill each other out there. Are you surprised he's saying, I'm taking nothing else but a title fight. I will wait forever for it. And do you think his next fight will be for the title?
Here's why that sentence is weird, because literally the sentence after, he's talking about fighters taking time off, and he's like, I don't understand why fighters are taking all this time off. Just go in there and fight. Oh, by the way, I'm only going to accept a title fight next, so I'll wait for the title shot. I'm like, pick a lane. Pick a door. Like, I don't care what hill you want to die on. If you want to wait for the belt, that is your right. I'm sure you'll take another fight if the money's right, but then don't question fighters waiting and then immediately say you're going to wait. That is very strange, because when he said it, it was such an odd combination of sentences back to back that I questioned myself whether I had heard the previous sentence correctly, because I'm like, no one's going to criticize someone and then immediately do the thing they're criticizing, to the point where I even looked at our colleague Oscar Willis, who was sitting next to me. I'm like, did he just say this and that? And Oscar was like, I think so, but that's like a weird thing to say. And then I went back and listened. I'm like, it's just Sean Strickland being Sean Strickland, saying one thing and then doing the other. So weird combination, like flex on someone, a bunch of people for saying like, oh, you're not fighting, and then immediately say you're going to wait for the title shot. Don't care which lane you pick, just pick a lane. If you say you want to die on, like, it was weird. It was very weird. So I'm not surprised. I'm surprised that Sean Strickland would wait, because he seems like a dude that's down to clown. Like, remember he famously fought a Boost, and everyone's like, why are you fighting this guy? He's not even ranked. And Sean Strickland was like, I said I wanted to fight on this month, and this was the name they presented to me. I didn't want to wait for another name. I wanted to fight right now. Obviously, the second you start getting a lot of money for these fights, that changes, because then you don't need to fight as much, because you make a lot more for individual fights. Sean Strickland obviously took this Paulo Costa fight because his new contract. Obviously, we all saw what Sean Strickland said to Daniel Cormier. He's probably not 100% happy, but he's happier than he was previously. Probably even more happy with his pay than when he was champion. So it's Sean Strickland. I'm not going to try to get into that man's head, because that seems like a very dark, complicated place that I just have no interest in wading those waters whatsoever. So, yes, surprised based solely on what he told me to my face. And then I remember with Sean Strickland, and I'm not trying to get into that man's head. Do not yell at me in press conferences anymore. It solves nothing.
Well, speaking of Jose setting up somebody to die on a certain hill, we're going to head to round 3. The point for round 2 goes to Jed Bashu. Jose almost stole that one. There's some good stuff.
I'm just out here powering through adversity. You know, I daring to be great, working through all the things. And I don't know why y'all hate on me. You know, I got 20 bands for you.
Save
I
that.
sense
I have a
after
feeling
the
that might
last
come up later.
After the Bizarro Links episode, and Jed famously like decided not to answer the last question that I very fairly asked him, a bunch of people have been like, you should have made the loser have to do something so they would want to win. And I was like, that is an excellent idea for a future Bizarro Links.
Bizarro Links. The anniversary, don't miss it, coming up in May of 2025. But Jose, let's go back to you. Let's bring Jose up on the screen here, because Jose is responsible for the most discussed moment of the UFC 302 press conference by simply asking Dana White this question: where does Islam Makhachev rank in the pantheon of lightweights? Dana White turned that question about where Islam ranks at lightweight into the Jon Jones is the best fighter in the world, and if you disagree, you shouldn't even be allowed to do rankings. And what's funny and coincidental and very ironic about all of this is I was actually talking to a friend of mine last week about MMA and covering the sport, and while Dana White still seems like he's sort of going through the motions when it comes to the UFC compared to Power Slap and, you know, his Bull and all his other ventures, I was telling my friend, man, Dana really hasn't said anything totally wacko this year, outside of maybe the Movsar Evloev Arnold Allen fight being one of the worst fights he's ever seen.
I don't even think he watched that fight.
This, I agree. But this, Jose, based on just the question about Islam being a lightweight and how good he is at lightweight, this Islam is good, but he ain't no Jon Jones thing from Dana White on Saturday night that derived from this question that literally had nothing to do with Jon Jones. How did you react to that? Like, I'm sure nothing Dana says surprises you, but flipping that question into the whole Jon Jones pound for pound debate was pretty crazy.
It wasn't, because he does this all of the time. Like, if I ask Dana White anything, I don't know what his answer is going to be, because he might, like, here's the thing. At UFC, I believe it was UFC 274, I believe that was Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje. That was also when Shogun lost to Ovince St. Preux for this, what was that, the second time or whatever, the rematch. It was Shogun's second to last fight. And I asked Dana White, like, what do you want to do? Where do you want Shogun to go from here? What do you want for the rest of his career? And then he goes, thank you for asking me that question. Anderson Silva, what did I do to you? And then he just started a rant about Anderson Silva's comments in like what Anderson Silva is talking about, like fighter pay or whatever at that time. And I was like, okay, but like, what do you want have to happen to Shogun? Like, what are we doing here, guy? So after that, and then I asked him about, what was it? I asked him about the flags because when there was the flag ban where you couldn't carry your country's flag out for a while, and in the UK, I go, a bunch of fighters said they weren't allowed to bring the flags out. Can you tell me why? And he goes, you know why? And I go, nope, truly don't. And then like a year and a half later, he's just like, yeah, everyone said like we banned flags and this and that, and like I got pressured, and I'm like, you still didn't tell me why. Like, I'm waiting for that answer. Like, you told me I knew. I racked my brain. There are a myriad of answers, all of them very viable and very, I want to preface this, understandable reasons why you banned flag carrying for that week. If it was that week only, I get it, because let's not forget, Volkov was fighting Tom Aspinall in the main event, and there were a couple other fighters on that. Avoid the drama. I get it. You could have said that. You didn't. You told me I knew why, and then you put it on me. And then, like I said, like a year later, you kind of backtracked it a bit. I'm like, whatever. So after that point, I could ask Dana, I'd be like, Dana, what do you think should happen with Tony Ferguson next? And then he could be like, BJ Penn, why are you running for governor? I'm just like, great. Tell me about Tony Ferguson. Like, let's stay on track, my guy. But like, no. So if you were to ask me, if the question was, because I forgot the question, were you surprised at Dana's response that you asked him about Islam and then he answered about Jon Jones? Absolutely not. No part of me was surprised about that, because he does this all of the time.
Jed, this was quite the stand to take, especially after that question. And boy, was that great timing, huh?
Sure was. It was wildly interesting. I mean, not really. It's just Dana is just a man controlled by his id. And I've thought about trying to figure out why we went here and like what was the plan. There was no plan. Like, I'm pretty sure that Dana either misheard what Jose said, and then that set him off on this topic that he's clearly been like harboring. And he just was like, Pantheon is pound for pound, and he conflated the two in his head and was like, go. Or he just like was scrolling Twitter and saw somebody say something about it before he walked back, and then that was fresh in his mind, and it's like the first Islam trigger was just going to get him. And I honestly don't know why he loves Jon Jones so much. I also like pretty objectively almost everything Dana said there was incorrect. But it's fine. Like, it's fine for you to think Jon Jones is the pound for pound number one fighter. There's not an issue with that. Like, you're pretty close to objectively wrong, but you're not all the way there. So that's like not an unreasonable position to have. It is a very unreasonable thing to say, my opinion is fact, and if you don't agree, you're an idiot, especially when what you are saying is incorrect and makes you stupid. Your company has actively promoted. They have consistently promoted this man as the top pound for pound fighter in the world. We did the whole Islam versus Volk pound for pound number one on the line. So like, you are part and parcel of this. And to then be like, anyone who says that is the stupidest human who's ever drawn breath is just like wildly insane. But it's also just who Dana White is at this point in his life. And so can't be surprised that it happens, but it is always weird when something takes a turn like this, and the evening wasn't at any point about, hey, look how great Islam Makhachev. Islam Makhachev is at best, like, the greatness of Islam Makhachev is at best the third biggest story coming out of 302. Because number one is Dustin, number two is Dana talking about Jon Jones, and maybe Islam's three, or maybe it's Sean Strickland. Like, that's not where you want to be as promoter for the number one pound for pound guy in the world. So it's dumb and weird, but can't be unexpected.
Makhachev's performance was amazing, Jed. The closing sequence, the striking, his takedowns, and we talked about this on the post-fight show. We talked about it all week. He probably got the best version of Dustin Poirier we've seen inside the octagon, all things considered. If you're viewing this through the Arman Tsarukyan lens, who we assume should be next, although Islam Makhachev calling for the welterweight title, from what I'm seeing on Twitter, he returned home, did some local media, and said he'd prefer to fight Conor McGregor over Arman Tsarukyan, which, of course, I think anybody would say that at this point for the dollar bills, y'all. But are you more concerned or less concerned through the Arman Tsarukyan lens after that performance from the champion? Because we kind of laid out how Arman feels about it, that Makhachev looks slow and tired and feels like it's going to be an easy fight for him.
If I'm in Arman's camp, I am more concerned because I don't know if you know this. Arman's camp is the camp that just got worked on. Like, is the same people who just lost to him. And so, like, yes, there are some things if you're Arman Tsarukyan and the American Top Team guys that you can take away. I do think that Islam Makhachev is showing like pretty consistent signs of having cardio issues. Not cardio issues, but that he does slow down as the fight goes on. And Arman Tsarukyan probably does have a pretty decided advantage in gas tank over a 25-minute fight. But I don't like, did he look slow? Like, Islam's never looked fast. He is not a fast fighter. Like, the thing I have said about him since almost day one is this dude is 85% of Khabib. And the 15% he's not is that Khabib was probably one of the best athletes who's ever competed in this sport. And Islam is a plus athlete. Like, if that, he might just be like actual standard issue lightweight athlete. He has never been fast. He has never been explosive, but his game is not built to be those things. And so, like, what I saw on Saturday is, hey, he didn't get to play his fastball. Dustin and the ATT boys had prepared very, very effectively at stopping Islam's kind of go-to maneuvers. And so he was having to work on his changeup. He's having to throw his off-speed pitches. And he still took Dustin down every round of the fight, controlled the fight, arguably won all 4 rounds before securing a finish in the 5th. And then, like I've talked about on other shows, the championship mindset to go into that 5th round and not go, I'm probably ahead, I just need to win this round however I do it. But to do it and be like, hey, I'm going to finish this dude and then finish the dude and do it in a sick-ass way. That leg whip was cool as hell. Like, I don't take a lot of technical things away from this that are positives for Arman. It's not like, he believes in himself and, I'm sure he believes he can win, but like, I don't look at that going, man, Islam couldn't had a hard time taking Dustin down. Like, and then he still just won all the striking exchanges. It's like, that's not a good thing that he could outstrike a superior boxer to you. I agree. Islam is not going to have an easy time taking Arman down the fight, but he did in the first time. Still pulled it off because he's got a lot of tricks, got a lot of skill. This dude is justifiably the top pound for pound fighter in the world. And so while it's not all bad news, like, that felt a lot more of bravado from Arman to be like, he would be an easy fight for me. It's like, no, like, that dude is going to be hell on wheels for any man on 2 feet.
Jose, what do you think about this Islam versus Arman matchup now? Because there's no other fight in the UFC that I want to see more from a high-level martial arts standpoint. Obviously, it's not, the biggest drawing fight of all time, but in terms of a lightweight title fight, boy, oh boy, I'm very excited for it. Do you give Arman, because you know how the MMA fans are, Islam was exposed and all this BS, which is just absolutely ridiculous, but does this fight with Poirier make the Arman fight more interesting to you? Does it feel like Islam might have more success than you may have thought heading in against an Arman Tsarukyan? What are your thoughts coming out of it?
Well, I always thought Arman was going to be, him and Gamrot would be just difficult matchups for Islam in general, because they're both very good grapplers and very good wrestlers. And like Dustin Poirier is not a wrestler first. He declared himself the best boxer in the UFC, and just I'm not going to get into that debate, but anytime you can get a guy that can nullify a person's like one of their greatest strengths, and then it just has like when two high level grapplers fight, it usually turns into a sloppy kickboxing match, which I'm all about. Arman and Islam are not going to have a sloppy kickboxing match. I would love to see an MMA fight between those two where they seem to their strengths align very well. So in terms of a high level martial arts competition, I've been wanting to see this rematch forever. Same as a Gamrot Islam fight. Hell, like I said, like Gamrot Arman 2 would also be a lot of fun. I also think there's something where, like, remember when Dominic Cruz was just beating up on all of the Team Alpha Male fighters for so long, and then eventually Cody Garbrandt they figured it out, and I believe it was Justin Buchholz was his head coach at the time. You know, they had done so many camps preparing for Dominic Cruz that eventually they just figured it out. Stuff that didn't work in the other fights, they perfected and they saw and they knew it was going to happen. Am I saying that this is going to happen with Arman and Islam? I don't know. But if ATT keeps throwing fighters at Islam and Habib, eventually they might figure it out. Now, Habib and Islam have shown to have almost no weaknesses outside of this cardio issue that Islam seems to have, which I don't really subscribe to that notion, because he also confirms that he had a pretty bad case of staph when he got into the United States. If you fight Dustin Poirier for 5 rounds while recovering from staph infection, you're gonna get tired. So I would love if Islam comes in 100%, no staph infection, whatever. I don't think cardio is going to be a major issue against Arman. This might also be the case where, like, if this fight is in Madison Square Garden, which I'm not saying it is, but I think that that fight could headline MSG if Jon Jones Stipe doesn't, because Arman is doing a real good job at becoming one of the most disliked lightweights among fans outside of, the Armenian crowd and fans, because he is very much beloved. But if you watched any of those fan Q&As with Arman before his fight against Charles, he couldn't even get a word in without getting just booed mercilessly, solely because he said he was going to beat Charles Oliveira, who's one of the most beloved fighters. Now that he's saying all this stuff about Dustin, who is probably him and Max are like tied for the most beloved fighters in the UFC right now, he's not doing himself any favors. That could obviously work in his favor in terms of like drawing interest to this fight, because people will want to see him lose. Islam is been gaining more and more fans in the United States. I can't imagine he didn't gain I would imagine he gained a ton of fans off the Poirier performance. Will this be an easy fight for either? Absolutely not. I think it's going to be a 5-round banger. I definitely don't think this is going to be a stoppage, because I think both are too good and too much in their primes of their career to be finished by the other one. But I want to see, I don't care there's a title on the line. I just want to see these two guys fight 5 rounds so badly.
Yep. Fight's going to rule.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see when it happens. Whether it happens at MSG, probably will happen in Abu Dhabi, but golly, cannot wait for that one. Just like I can't wait for this Saturday, the UFC back in Louisville, Kentucky. We're going to breeze through this real quick. Point for round 3 goes to Jed Meshew, 2-1. Nicely done. Good battle. So I'm looking at Jed's whiteboard right now, and I'm glad we get to reveal some mysteries here, because, yes, let me pull this up. UFC back in Louisville, Kentucky, UFC Louisville at the world's famous KFC Yum Center, the main event. Jed's favorite middleweight, Jared Cannonier. We have to name him now. He will take on Nasruddin Imavov. Dominic Reyes back against Dustin Jacoby. Raul Rosas Jr. against Ricky Tercios. And 11 other battles on the slate. So Jed Meshew, I'm curious, top of the dome. What's the old fart scale reading for this one?
This is pretty bad. It's pretty bad fart scale, Mike. I don't even want to give the top fight a fart. I mean, objectively it is one, but like, come on, man. This fight is tough. Dominic Reyes is famous and hasn't won a fight since he beat Jon Jones. Raul Rosas Jr. is taking on a dude who is allergic to stopping takedowns, so that fight's going to go about exactly how you'd expect. This is a weird fight card because a lot of these fights are actually like very competitive. Almost none of them have meaningful stakes, and even fewer of them really have like hey, I know that dude and want to watch. Like this would be my standard for a solid, acceptable Apex event. Instead, it's a road show, and so a little tougher here. But we persevere, we power through. Louisville deserves better, but this is what they're getting. They're getting Jared Cannonier at 40 years old. I assume we'll lose this fight because he is 40 years old, and if he wins, then it's just like he'll have the weirdest, like, should be in title contention, but is in no way in title contention run of anyone I can remember lately. Dominic Reyes, it'll be real sad. Just ballpark. I haven't done crunch the numbers. I'll do that before the preview show tomorrow. This is looking like 3-4. 4 feels generous. 3 farts. This is a 3-fart card. It's tough hang. Tough going out there.
Jose, your face as Jed was explaining his score was pretty tremendous.
If you live in Louisville, do you care about going to this event?
Yeah, because you live in Louisville, and anything that happens in Louisville to get you out of the house is something worth it.
Okay, but if I'm correct, Mike, this is your purview, not me. I believe there's a WWE event on Friday. Would you rather drop tickets to go to that or to this?
WWE in Louisville?
That's what
Like
I thought. I
SmackDown's
thought that
in
they're doing
Louisville.
a Friday.
Oh,
Friday.
whatever. I have no idea. They're both on different days.
Which one would you go to
Louisville.
if you could only go to one? It's an interesting question.
Not everyone has all the money. We're not all rolling in the travel dollars that you've earned.
I would say I would go to SmackDown because I have to work UFC Louisville.
Okay.
So I'm going to be sitting watching anyway. If I'm in Louisville for UFC Louisville, I'm probably working it. After I go to the Muhammad Ali Museum, which is also another thing to do in Louisville.
Fair. Your thoughts on this slate of fights? All 14.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it. The main event is what it is. Jared Cannonier is 40. A lot of great wins, a lot of big losses. Imavov is, kind of floating around that 8 to 12 ranking. So I get it. Dominic Reyes is Dustin Jacoby, I would imagine, is going to have some sort of violent finish from either man. Dustin Jacoby's strengths tend to play into Dominic Reyes' weakness of leaving his chin out in the open. Royal Roses generates a whole ton of traffic for social, so excited to see that. Ricky Tercios is a fellow weeb, loves Dragon Ball Z, excited for that. Julian Marquez is a name, and if he wins whatever way, he's probably going to have some sort of, because MMA fighting, especially this panel outside of myself, loves post-fight interviews. He'll have something to talk about. Very excited to see the return of Miguel Baeza, because at one point in time, he was supposed to be the man at welterweight, and then he just kind of ran into a wall, and to the point where he was winning all of these fights before he just got knocked dead. So he's a get or get got type of guy. I thought he was going to be the next big thing at welterweight, so I'm excited to see him fight Puna Soriano, who's also a guy who gets put to sleep or puts people to sleep. Thiago Moises, Ludovic Klein, I think is a very underappreciated banger. Thiago Moises, high-level grappler, keeps teasing, and like I said, everyone at MMA Fighting outside of myself loves a post-fight interview. Thiago Moises is already teasing his post-fight interview, which should get all of your guys' blood exciting. Bracketona, tough guy, interesting interview. Was in a good fight to win tough in Boston. I know Mike wasn't there for the actual fight night, but that was a fun little scrap. Cody Stamen's always a fun guy. Montana De La Rosa, Andrew Lee are names that people will remember. So there are obviously gaps in these fights, and they're all competitive. None of them have stakes in terms of title implications. No one on this card is going to be fighting for the title next. But I think this is going to be a card that lends itself to a lot of exciting finishes based on matchups. Like, a lot of people that get knocked out are fighting guys that like to knock people out. So I think this might be I'll say it, this is probably going to be the opposite of 303. A bunch of really fun, or 302, a bunch of really fun prelims and undercard fights, and then a 5-round, 25-minute main event. That's my prediction.
There you have it. We'll talk more about UFC Louisville tomorrow. I think we've done our part on this Thursday. Let's move on. Point for round 4 goes to Jose Youngs Mr. Positivity, 2-2. Loves a good post-fight interview, just like the rest of us.
Yup.
Is a fan of the realistic. Yes, he's a fan of the realistic yet attainable callouts, and I'm very curious to see what Thiago Moises has in mind. If he calls out Dustin Poirier or Islam Makhachev, then we will have a problem. But I don't think Thiago Moises would do such a thing.
Oh, Thiago already lost to Islam. Main event that I'm sure
a rematch,
no one remembers. That's true.
A rematch. He could do it again. Give me a full camp.
Armin lost Islam too.
That's true.
Yeah,
in his UFC debut, and then clawed his way back. Everyone loves a comeback story. Am I right?
That's true.
Thiago's fight against Benoit Saint-Denis in Paris is another underrated. Like, that was a fun little scrap for as long as it lasted. Thiago's in fun. Like, when he loses big. It's
so
usually
we're
gets
clear.
mauled.
The farts. One of the farts was Moises Klein because that's a good fight.
Yeah,
and,
it's a very good fight.
That's it. Like, there was a time when I liked Miguel Baeza too, but then he lost to your favorite fighter, Andre Fialho, Jose. Yeah. So he's kind of no longer a dude we can care about.
Yeah, but again, he got slept, right?
Yes. I think
he's a guy like he might go to bed or he might send you to bed. I'm all for it.
Yeah, that's gonna be a fun one. We'll see. By his return, Puna dropping down to welterweight.
Thiago Moises has had his UFC debut, if I remember correctly. He won the Contender Series and then got thrown into a fight against Benil on short notice in Denver with altitude, something crazy like that. And then I know he lost to Damir Ismagulov, Islam, and Benoit Saint-Denis. And those guys are all monsters.
And Joel Alvarez, who is
he's a middleweight.
Oh, and Joel Alvarez blew weight.
Yeah, Joel Alvarez is huge.
And damn good. Thiago Moises is exactly what I'd say when I say lightweight's the best, because this man has just lost to killers and is unbelievable.
Who's Joel Alvarez lost to? Armin Tsarukyan and Damir? I can't think of anyone else. He's beating fools up. I know he beat Joe Duffy. I know he beat Mark Diakese. He might never be ranked in the top 15, but he's gonna be a guy that you're gonna have to beat to get into the top 15.
Yeah, Armin clubbed that dude around.
Yeah,
that was
beat the soul out of him.
One of his best performances for sure. All right, time for the knockout round. There are many, many options we could have chosen here, but luckily somebody came through yesterday and just gave us the perfect question. So, Jed, you get to choose. Do you want to go first, or do you want to pass it on over to Jose?
Fairly certain I know where we're going here, so I'll take the lead, sir.
All right. Initially, it was going to be because it was after we wrapped. I think it was this past Friday, we found out that Jake Paul Mike Tyson was being postponed, and apparently we're going to get a new date tomorrow. So we will save the reaction for that for another time. But the former UFC light heavyweight champion of the world, Jamahal Hill, has come through with the perfect knockout round question. 2 months after getting knocked out by Alex Pereira, Jamahal Hill decided to go on Instagram and express his feelings about Pereira celebrating his knockout, comparing his celebration to beating Glover Teixeira in a pretty one-sided fashion to become the light heavyweight title, showing respect, all of that. Giving Pereira a bunch of stuff for the celebration, giving Pereira a bunch of stuff saying that him pushing Herb Dean out of the way threw him off his game, set up the knockout much better so that he couldn't plant his feet, and then called out all the fans for reacting and finding it hilarious that Jamahal Hill got, as you like to say, booped at UFC 300, and then even went further and said that he will fight a fan who decides to roll up on the gym, and if the fan can have success and defeat him in a fight, he will award the fan $20,000 in cashola. So, Jed, Jamahal Hill getting ready to fight Carlos Ulberg in 20-something days. Your reaction 2 months later, letting his full feelings out about the way UFC 300 came to an end. Go.
The man pretty clearly seriously just needs a hug and someone to tell him that we love you, it's fine. But it is just so baffling to me, the timing to do this. Why are you up in your feels right now about this? And also, like, who gives a shit what anyone says on the internet? Like, I gotta be honest, if you're living your life based around what people on the internet are saying, you're doing things incorrectly. It was all just so a continuation of him really just being this dude and being like an eminently unlikable individual in the sport. Like, maybe there is a kernel of truth somewhere in some of the stuff, and I do respect that he had respect for Glover after beating him. That's not why anyone was doing this, and it's not about the it is objectively funny for you to be like, I'm going to show I am levels better than the glory kickboxing champion of the world and get booped immediately. And now to come out and be like, the only reason you got me was because I was too concerned about kicking you in the balls. Like, it's just insane, man.
I gotta say, even considering some of the things that have been said and some of the reactions of this year, I was surprised by Jamahal Hill Instagramming out his thoughts 2 months afterwards.
Still going today.
Not stopping. Jose, to knock down the fourth wall on our Slack channel, you were the one that let us know that this happened. I jumped all over this. I was very, very excited to read his thoughts and continue on with them yesterday, but you're here. You got the live microphone in front of you. 2 months later, Jamahal Hill gives Alex Pereira a bunch of crap for how he celebrated, for how the knockout came to be, and then called out all the fans who questioned his reaction and questioned the skill set, I guess, in some respect, of Jamahal Hill. 2 months after UFC 300, 1 minute on the clock, go.
I simply, and I state this, and I emphatically do not care at all what any fighter has to say about a fighter that just beat them on social media, because the fight is over. If you wanted to beat him, you would have beat him. Jamahal, and like in this whole thing of like, oh, like I was concerned with like the low blow and everything. If you rewatch it, Jamahal Hill threw a punch and then it was like a check hook that put him down. So like Alex Pereira was reacting to Jamahal Hill's strike, and then he got put on his ass and finished. It's also Jamahal Hill, like we said, like he says a lot of things online. I also subscribe to the notion that if you mock your opponent and then get knocked out, you gotta live with it. Jamahal Hill brought that like necklace thing to the press conference, held it up in his face. Alex Pereira literally said, "We were cool until you did all of that," and then he knocked him out and did his famous thing. So you reap what you sow, but again, don't care. Jamahal Hill can say whatever he wants. Still won't care. And that's not just about Jamahal Hill. That's about any fighter. Do not care about online trash talk. It does nothing for me.
God, I wish this Instagram post came out the morning of the ranking.
Also,
show.
not for nothing. Like I get outside of Jamahal Hill's online persona, I don't hate watching Jamahal Hill fight. Like the dude, has very exciting finishes, and I wish that was his selling point, because whenever anyone talks about Jamahal Hill, it's always like that dude is really weird online, and then I wish he could just lean into like, yo, I can beat the soul out of people and turn them off. That is infinitely more interesting to me.
Jamahal Hill is just Jon Jones online, but he has lost. Like if Jon lost, this is how Jon would be online.
Probably.
Like 100%, they would just like, this is how Jon would react if he had ever like lost clean. Can you imagine the tweets we would have got if Dominic Reyes had won that decision that he should have won? We could have powered the sun on the fury of that man's tweets. It's just like they are that dude. Jamahal Hill just isn't as good as Jon, and so he says insane. This is the most insane thing of all time.
Yeah,
you only knocked me out because it was weird. What?
This is why everyone loves imagine like Shogun, who has never said anything like this. Dustin Poirier just tweets, "Hey, stay hydrated, everyone." Like. Tell your homies you love them. I'm like, you know what, Dustin Poirier? Exactly.
Yeah. Give me
Somebody
all
tweeted that. Somebody tweeted that not that like during the show, because it was like Jamahal Hill's still going. It's like, yeah, nobody got mad at Dustin when he said he was going to knock out Islam and then got choked. What's the difference? And was like, I don't know. Dustin hasn't been real weird online about a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Dustin didn't also say that this is going to be the easiest fight of his life. that he was going to stand up and this was going to be easy work. He was excited
Also-
that Dustin Poirier didn't come out and say he was excited that Islam Makhachev beat Alexander Volkanovski because he knew this is going to be an easy fight. That's what Jamahal Hill did.
Also, like,
That's
not
what
for
Jamahal Hill did.
nothing, like, I like what you say after fights is obviously very important in terms. I'm not talking about like post-fight interviews and stuff, but like Ilia Topuria, for as much as goodwill as he got for beating Volkanovski, for just like saying what he was gonna do and then did what he said he was gonna do, and then immediately says, "I'm not fighting any of these contenders," rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Tyron Woodley knocked Robbie Lawler dead, and then immediately called out Nick Diaz, who was suspended, and George St. Pierre, who was retired. I understand. Like, ask for it if you want, but there are contenders to fight. It just, like, what you say immediately after. Also, I know I keep saying also, but like Alex Pereira is one of the most popular fighters in all of combat sports right now. Him and Yuri are like the only two fighters at light heavyweight where they are both massive fan favorites. Anyone that fights Yuri is going to get booed. Anyone that fights Alex is going to get booed. And then if you continue like arguing with fans after, it's not going to be, the outcome's not going to be great for you in terms of optically, in terms of the eyes of the fan, because they already dislike you, not because they dislike you, they just really like Alex.
Yeah.
In the history of the internet, who has argued with fans on it and come off looking cooler and smart and wonderful? No one.
Paul Felder.
No,
Paul Felder.
the one interaction I can think of, but that's less. Him
He's
coming
had a
off
few.
Awesome.
He's
Yeah.
had a few.
It's
He's had a
like-
few good ones, but he picks his
I
spots.
can't remember them
perfect.
because dunking on nameless fans does not accomplish.
Are we talking about like
anything.
fighters or just people in general?
Like fighters? Like who of the fighting crew? Like every time Aljo tweets, it's just worse for him. Like every time
Yeah.
someone is doing the Twitter thing, they just come off looking worse. Like just
When
do what
Felder
Dustin
does it,
stay hydrated.
When Felder does it, the fan that he always interacts with is always like, "Yeah, good point. You win." Like he just somehow just states his
Or-
case so perfectly.
Or when someone's
But-
like, "Hey,"
Yeah.
like when he's teasing comeback, he's like, "Who should I fight?" And they're like, "Fight Shafkat." He's like, "Fuck no, I'm not fighting Shafkat." Like, love that.
He picks his spots perfectly. And let me just say about the whole Jamahal Hill thing once more. Jamahal Hill and the way he the way he presented himself in the build to that fight is the reason why I was so intrigued by it. So I'm not taking anything away from how he
Right,
built
no.
the fight up. He was the MVP of Fight Week, in my opinion.
100%.
He made that fight way more interesting by saying what he said and getting Alex in sort of the headspace he was in. But as Jed said so many times heading into that fight, cool, man, talk your shit. But in the end, you have to live with the result, no matter what it is. And Jed jumped on BTL the following week and was like, you can't come out and be like, I overcame adversity and did that. No, you said what you said. You have to accept it and then move on. But he's certainly not moving on. And hey, if that's what he wants to do, that's what he wants to do.
And he's got a fight that he might lose. Like, instead of fighting people about a fight that already happened, you might want to focus on Carlos Ulberg, dude.
Yeah, he needs to focus on Carlos Ulberg.
If Ladies Night knocks you out, you're in a bad way.
Yeah. Even at light heavyweight, he's in a tough spot if he loses this fight. No doubt about it. But we'll see. Maybe this is just the venom he needs to have this incredible performance and get his way back to a title fight. We'll see. On June 29th.
I could also accept if he comes out afterwards. It's like, I was just trying to see if maybe I could slot in with a Pereira rematch to save 303.
That was my first thought, because I said that on the ranking show too.
Yeah.
I was like,
If that's
maybe Jamahal
actually
Hill
in his
come
head,
out.
okay, I accept this.
Yeah.
That
Just
is
say it.
more than reasonable.
Just say it. Yeah.
But you
Just
should
say it.
also just say that. Like,
I
make
also
that
think you
part of
should
it.
say
So,
those
like, hey,
things after the fight happens. Like, nothing drives me crazier. Well, actually, a lot of things drive me crazier. But one of the things that grinds my gears is like when we interviewed Armin at Media Day, and he's like, "Oh, I'm just saying all this stuff to sell the fight." I'm like, "Nope, that's super lame. Stick by your guns." And then after the fight, you can say that. If you say you're going to drink Charles Oliveira's blood, keep that energy. Don't just say, I'm just selling the fight. Nah, dude. You want to decapitate that fool until the fight's over.
Alex Pereira responded to Jamahal Hill, was like, you reap what you sow. And I was like,
And I want to hold on. This is the last thing I'll say on this. I want to clarify something because I keep seeing that photoshopped graphic going around. And Alex Pereira didn't do himself any favors by sharing the photoshopped graphic where someone threw in a racial word in there that Alex Pereira did not say in the original comment. Someone just photoshopped it, and then Alex Pereira shared that Photoshop. I don't even think Alex Pereira knew what it said. I think he just saw the graphic and shared it. I hope Alex Pereira didn't share it knowing what that means, because that would be a super bummer. It's like when Sergey Pavlovich shared this meme that said all kinds of just awful things, and then he took it down and said, I don't speak English. I just recognized a few words, shared it, and then someone let me know. I apologize. That's fine. If Alex Pereira knew what that word meant, that sucks. That sucks so much that if he shared it and still knew.
The sport's a wild place. All right, Casey, come on in. As you can see, we've been telling you to vote. I didn't tell you once, but
I like the fifth round. We just had like a fifth round. It wasn't a sudden death.
It was just a great fifth round. Casey's here. Baddest stash in the game. Do we have a winner?
We do have a winner. We have a winner.
Is it the fans?
Nah, the fans took a big L today.
They took a big L at 302 as well.
Yeah.
You know what time? I got home at 7 a.m. on Sunday morning because I had to take that train home. Well, because trains at 4 a.m. don't run as frequently. So if you miss a train, you got to wait 45 minutes.
Every 45 minutes, yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah. And nothing is worse than I know Casey loves Albuquerque. I'm not a big fan of Albuquerque. The only city I dislike more is Newark, New Jersey. And that train stop is not ideal at 4 a.m.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Yeah.
Food for thought.
You don't have to sell me on that one. I buy it.
What, you don't want to go hang out in the streets of Newark, New Jersey? Brick City. People don't even, it's called Brick City because all the brick housing developments there. It's not a great place to be in.
Who's going to be in a better place to be in, Casey, with a victory under their belts?
That's right.
Your winner today with 56% of the votes is Jed Michoud.
Shocking.
Hey, 56. We're getting better, Jose. We're getting better. We're getting closer.
On this one, Jose deserved to win. He was more locked in than I was. Nonsense voting from the end.
That's right.
But I'll be better next time. You know, I'll be better. And then in like 2 months, I'll come on here and think, actually, it was bullshit. It was trickery and nonsense. So just wait till the rematch. But I didn't deserve this one, and that's okay. I'm like Dustin Poirier. You know, golf clap. Well done, Islam. That was I went to sleep. You know, choked me out even though I tapped out. Same thing. So that's where we're at. Boys.
Battle through adversity of the league.
50 wins for Jed.
50 wins, Jed.
Oh, wow, 50 is a big number. I wish I deserved this one. I deserved like a lot of the losses should be wins as well, so I can take some solace and like maybe it's evening out. But I do wish that I got to 50 with like some real chutzpah, you know.
Well, it happens. People have spoken.
Comprehensively
Jose,
quiet. 13-13. I mean, 500 is great.
Better than you thought.
That's Red Sox
Baseball Hall of Fame.
No, I'm sorry.
If you're in the NBA,
13 and 14.
That's even more Red Sox record right there.
If you're in the NBA's Eastern Conference, you might get the 8th seed with that record. So you're still in play, Jose. You are still in play.
You could be, if you're in the NL Central, you'll win the division with a below 500
It's
record.
true. It's very, very true. Yes. Casey, hit the music. We are done. We'll be back next week to, talk the fallout of UFC Louisville. Look ahead to UFC Vegas 90.
Worst card put on paper.
Ish, maybe 94. Don't really know if that's Tsarukyan versus Alex Perez. Maybe we'll find out when Jake Paul, Mike Tyson is happening. I don't know. Maybe we'll find out what's happening with Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler. All things are on the table for next Thursday, so join us then. For Jed, for Jose, for Casey on the ones and twos, I am Mike Heck. The iconic voice of Esterlin takes you home. Back next week. Good night, everybody.
Love y'all.
This has been Between the Links, an MMA fighting production on the Vox Media Network.